Abortion, term limits, Supreme Court, and Trump indictments. It's the Mailbag on the Balance of Power Roundtable. I'm Matt Robeson, and I am joined by my Blue Amp channel partner, Cliff Schecter. You're going to be able to find this show on video on the Blue Amp channel on YouTube, which of course we hope you've subscribed to. And of course, as an audio podcast, wherever you get your podcast. We did the first part of this with me, former Congressman Paul Hodes, and our conservative commentator panelist, Alicia Preston, a few days ago. Just posted this as we're recording it. And now we want to get to the rest of the mailbag. As promised, we really enjoy these shows. We love interacting with the people who are reading and listening to and watching the stuff we're putting out. We appreciate you and thank you for throwing us these questions.
Important for me to note that because you threw out these questions, Matt even let me sneak on to his podcast. Normally I'm banned, like on MSNBC about a decade ago, but I was able to sneak on here. Is that they have a certain IQ level to get on, and I just missed the cut. But because of you guys, you gave me the end run around that. So thank you.
Just be careful. If we don't like your answers, we might Chris Licht you and get you on out of here. All right, look.
I get to hang around for a year, completely destroy your podcast ratings before you got rid of me? Is that what you're saying?
No, I need a new model for that, right? You're right. Bad idea. Bad idea. All right, let's jump right into it. We're probably going to put this out as an audio pod and then break it up into a series of videos. So if you're watching this one, watch for more videos coming. We'll keep these to a bunch of short segments.
Let me say one more thing, but let's stop and just say thank you to everybody. The Beyond Politics podcast, I know from my good friend Matt here, has been growing rapidly. I don't have their numbers in front of me. I do have our YouTube numbers in front of me. I think 2 months ago, had 13,000 subscribers, and we are knocking on the door of 21,000. So thank you for commenting. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for liking.
All right, let's do this like a draft. You get the first answer or the first question. Why don't you do the first question? You do the first question.
We get from Derek. How do we effectively deal with radicalized family members who try and present right-wing hate talking points, is there any other kind, as legitimate? I try and have a good faith discussion with them and can never get through.
I want to give a hat tip to someone who responded in the comment thread to this, American Meteorite fan, who said something I think really insightful. But American Meteorite fan says, may I suggest reading about cult members who've been successfully deprogrammed? Only the believer can decide to find new reference points for their own reality. There is a literature on this. I actually studied persuasion in grad school. One of the first things to understand is that in persuasion, we talk about the acronym CARD. It stands for conversion, activation, reinforcement, and deactivation. Those are the four types of attitude change. And
you don't just punch them in the face. Is that what you're saying?
Normally,
I would never advocate violence.
Actually, conversion, the first one, C, that's what you're most of the time trying to do when you have an argument with someone, is verbally punch them in the face and beat them into submission. You're going to agree with me, damn it. And it turns out that almost never works. First step, set your sights on one of the other acronyms. And usually the best one is D, deactivation. And one of the best ways to do that, and this is a way actually that prisoners of war were brainwashed in the Korean War, it's asking them to identify anything that they don't like about their chosen ideology or their chosen cult leader, in this case, Trump. There's a principle in persuasion called reciprocity, which is why the Moonies used to hand out flowers at the airport, because you get something, you feel like you need to give something back. So what you can typically do is start a conversation where you say, look, I'm a Democrat. I will say that one thing that I don't love about Joe Biden is, and then you can ask, is there anything that really bugs you about Donald Trump? And what you start to do is, once people admit a crack in the wall of their support, it allows the floodwaters to start to first a trickle and then a steady flow. Another thing you can do is you can steer the conversation. They might throw some things in that you don't want to follow up on and some things that you do. One trick that psychotherapists use to try and keep someone going on the thread that you want is repeat the last two words of what they just said. So if they say, I love the way he takes it to the liberals and he's always agitating the snowflakes, although I do wish he weren't always throwing out all these third grade insults. And you could say third grade insult, and they will naturally expand on that. And you keep the flow going in the direction that you want. And just final thing I'll say is, you're not going to deactivate someone in one conversation. It's a long road, but get it going, get them started.
I always was a big believer that history and psychology are the two things you have to understand if you work in politics, because each of them plays such a large role. Well, I'm lucky in that I don't have really that many close family members who are MAGA types. I do have some friends, though, who fall into that zone of where they're Republican, but they're embarrassed by Trump. And that's the zone where, where a lot of what I think Matt is saying works. Now, it's a relatively long road, even though from being someone who I'm a Republican, I vote Republican. I don't like Donald Trump very much, but hey, he's the Republican. And I'm told, I hear all this stuff about Hillary Clinton that sort of scares me. And that's why, by the way, you see them doing this right now with the indictment of Trump, is they're trying to, you get Lindsey Graham and these people throwing out stuff like most Republicans believe, he just tweeted today, that Hillary Clinton is just as guilty of doing the same thing as Donald Trump, or more guilty, or whatever it is he said. And of course, he said most Republicans believe, because you've been feeding them BS. So what you need to do, you find that common ground and you find the ways to stick the needle in a little bit, not in a way that like hurts them, but hurts their support for Republicans. Oh, I'm not a fan of Donald Trump, but because he does this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, and what I'll try to say back is the gratuitous insulting, for example, like yelling at people and being abusive. Did you see that time that Ron DeSantis screamed at those kids on the stage for wearing masks? I mean, to yell at kids, I don't understand why anybody would do that. I remember at that time I saw Anthony Weiner do blah, 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 blah. Now you see, I'm doing what Matt was saying, which is I'm offering up a Democrat and saying, no, I'm not partisan. And the truth of the matter is, I do think Anthony Weiner's a terrible person. So that's an easy thing to do. But
you will sacrifice him. That's noble of you.
Yeah, you need to chip away at that. And the last thing I'll say is, like Matt was saying, is you find the commonality. I admit that. I know a lot of suburban type Republicans, but they're mostly pro-choice. They mostly believe that being gay and being straight is equal. They mostly think that we have a gun problem. And so I find those commonalities, and I know they care about their kids going to school and coming home safely. I know if one of their kids is gay, they would support them. So I find those areas and steer it away from the taxes and the things that inevitably they want to come back to.
I totally agree. And there's so much more we could say on this. I'd love to do a whole show on it. Maybe I will someday. And a lot of what Cliff is talking about is what in the persuasion literature you call valence issues, which are things that everyone agrees with. And very strongly, it's like, obviously we agree that we care about our kids, or, you know what, we're both horrified by anyone who would be a traitor to our country by being cavalier with our secrets. And that's always an avenue toward at least a more productive conversation. For people who are interested in more reading on this topic, I highly recommend the work of Robert Cialdini. Influence, The Science of Persuasion is his most well-known book. And Chris Voss, the former chief hostage negotiator for the FBI, wrote a terrific book called Never Split the Difference. It's a fantastic practical guide.
There with the literature.
So thank you very much to Derek for that question. Some of the other recent comments, I want to turn to one from Kat T, that's K-A-T, capital T-E-E. What's happening with the SCOTUS scandal, by which I assume you're referring to Clarence Thomas and Harlan Crow, Marvel supervillain Harlan Crow. Kat T says, I haven't heard anything about that lately. Cliff, what's going on?
I'll start with, it's amazing how in our modern world of ubiquitous media and ubiquitous GOP corruption, that it's hard for any one GOP scandal to stay on the front page. We had about 3 weeks of Clarence Thomas and Ginny Thomas and Gorsuch and Robert's wife, who's, I don't want to just call her Robert's wife, but I can't think of her name, so I'm sorry. But she's raking in the money for a big law firm, making recommendations, and I'm probably missing a few other scandals with the Supreme Court, because Kavanaugh stuff came out too, about how Kavanaugh, what we all knew, the FBI never really conducted an investigation until recently with the Trump indictments. They had grand juries in DC and in Florida. And we didn't even know there was one in Florida, because the thing about the Democrats, unlike Trump, who reads documents that say top secret, like super extra secret, our nuclear weapons, please don't tell anybody. And then Trump's, hey, have you heard about this one?
Or have you visited my bathroom?
Exactly. Visited my chandelier shit. We may have to
While I was crapping, I was reading about our Iran war plans.
And I stole that one from somebody, I can't think who, called it the chandelier shitter, but I liked it, and I thought I had to steal it, because we go, everybody, it's not gauche at all to have a chandelier in your crapper. That's what everybody does. Saddam Hussein, Ceausescu did, I think, and Trump. So I have heard things that the DOJ had opened potentially in an investigation, at least into Clarence Thomas. I had not heard about any of the others, but I can't confirm that for you, because again, these guys do not leak. And so I know some folks in that world, and from what I've heard, there are folks at the DOJ looking into Clarence Thomas, but Otherwise, the Senate has taken upon themselves, Matt and his former boss and current co-host, former Congressman Paul Hodes, have a great relationship with Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, who was on their show and talked about they've tried to propose legislation to pass ethics because there's no ethics requirement of the Supreme Court, which is insane. There is of every other court, but not there. But that would have to pass a Republican House. And I'll let you guess as to whether you think that'll happen. I don't see that. The Senate can pass it. I don't see that going anywhere, although McConnell may just filibuster. So we need more, as usual, we need more we need to take back the House, and we need more senators.
I agree. I commend the episode with Sheldon Whitehouse to everyone. The reporter at ProPublica who broke all of this news, Justin Elliott, was also a guest on our show and gave a lot of really fascinating details, not just about the story, but about how he and the team there at ProPublica unearthed it, the kind of the gumshoe reporting that they did. I hope people will check that out. Part of the issue that we have here is this is not a bug, it's a design in the Constitution that the judiciary is insulated from the political process, insulated from the executive branch, insulated from Congress. They get to weigh in through nomination and then confirmation of these federal judges. But after that, they are
and
lifetime.
I would add.
And impeachment.
But you need Republicans for that too.
You need Republicans for that. So there are limited constitutional avenues for redress when you've got an out of control and highly corrupt member of the Supreme Court. And some of the avenues that Congress has at their disposal, they've tried. Senator Ron Wyden has tried to pursue the tax angle. Harlan Crow is stiff-arming him. They'll try to keep after that. There are new financial disclosures that have been due. Lo and behold, guess who filed for an extension because they weren't quite ready to come up with their bullshit story. It was Samuel Alito and Clarence Thomas.
It could not be more brazenly corrupt.
And can I give two others? One is we had former Ohio Democratic Chairman David Pepper on the show several times, and he's written very persuasively, including in his most recent book, Saving Democracy. We had him on to talk about that, about the power of what you can do at the state level. Don't forget that most of the law that is enforced in this country happens at the state level. And he was part of an effort that won a majority on the Ohio Supreme Court that helped to claw back some of the damage done in gerrymandering in Ohio. Now that's subject to further legal wrangling. But the point is, you can make progress if you focus on the local level. Let's also not forget that about 90% of the cases that reach the upper echelons of our federal judicial system end at the appellate level. That's the level right below the Supreme Court. During the Trump administration, Donald Trump was able to appoint about a quarter of the federal judiciary, and he was able to tilt of the 13 circuit courts, that's that level of courts right below the Supreme Court, that here's the vast majority, something like 85,000 cases a year. He was able to tilt them so that a majority of them, 7 out of 13, now had Republican appointed majorities. Joe Biden is tilting that back. He has been at a record-setting confirmation pace for federal judges. And honestly, the best thing we can do, we may not be able to fix the situation with Harlan Crow and Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito and these jackals, but a lot of where the action is, which is at the federal appellate level and at the state level, that's something we can do something about, and we are doing something about. So there's a ray of hope.
And we did. I mean, it's very important, folks, to vote strategically. Always vote, but vote, give money strategically. The classic example this year, we had a situation where a Supreme Court seat opened up in Wisconsin. It was going to determine quite literally, whether there was a 4-4 tie, would there be a conservative majority, a liberal majority. We, by 10 points, went out because of choice and democracy and all these other things, and made sure that we elected somebody who's progressive. They don't have partisan labels there in the courts, but she's a Democrat. And in the end, that's going to ensure that abortion is legal in Wisconsin, unless the Supreme Court bans it in the entire country. And the last thing I'll say is public pressure. Again, petitions, making a voice heard. Everybody's, it doesn't do anything until it does something. We just had a voting rights case come out where Kavanaugh and Roberts joined a liberal majority. And I'd be willing to almost promise you, Roberts, he so badly wants to have a legacy where he's not looked at as in this tarnished legacy like the Lochner court of 100 years ago, that I think he may have stepped back from this one and actually given us a win on voting rights that is probably going to create another seat for Democrats. Again, can I tell you definitively that Justice Roberts was like, my legacy is important, I need to do something here?